Hey, Fedheads, welcome back to another episode of Sharing Our Pairings. This is Sharing Our Pairings episode 135. I decided I was going to start including the number since every week I have to put it in the YouTube and the podcast description. But I always forget what number it is, so I have to go back and check. So if I say it at the beginning of the episode, that way I'll remind myself. This is episode 135, the La Aurora ADN Dominicano. I'll show you the cigar right there for our video viewers. This has a real nice looking band on it. Like before we get into anything, but before we start talking,
it's textured.
yeah, but before we start talking about the cigar, I'm getting ahead of myself because I'm excited about this. I'm your host Tripp. I'm here with my co-host Dennis. Dennis, how you doing today, brother?
What's up, brother? Doing good. Little technical difficulties on my side, but hopefully work them out.
It's always got to be something every single time, and it's never the same thing.
5 minutes. Yep.
So yeah, we're smoking the La Aurora ADN Dominicano. I'll talk a little bit about the cigar in just a minute, but I want to talk about some news. There's some big news today in the cigar industry. So first, Zycar was acquired by Quality Importers, which seems crazy. I thought Zycar was kind of one of the juggernauts of the accessories industry, and they got bought by one of the other juggernauts of the accessories industry. Uh-oh, I'm losing Dennis. Maybe we won't talk about Zycar. Maybe he hung up. Dennis, are you there? Nope. Oh, now I can hear movement. So Zycar got purchased, of course, by Quality Importers. I'm really curious what this means because I know that there were some changes to the way that Paleo handled things. They moved production out of the U.S. To China, which, as far as I know, I think Zycars are already produced in China, so that's not going to be a big deal. But I'm curious to see how the quality is going to change, how the customer service is going to change, if those things change at all. I think Dennis is coming back, but I can't tell. He may be going offline entirely. Sorry about this, guys. As we were saying, technical difficulties every time. So I'm going to talk about the cigar then, and I may have to talk about it again if Dennis isn't aware of all the details. So I'm smoking the Robusto, trying to get it to focus there. And we were talking about the band a little bit. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little more, but I want to talk about the tobacco. So the ADN, for those who don't know, underneath it says, you can see it if I can get it on camera. It's very small. Not only does it say ADN Dominicano, it says Dominican DNA. So ADN is actually the Spanish translation of DNA. And they wanted to kind of bring in the DNA of Dominican tobacco. So they went with one of the oldest fermentation techniques, which is called Andulo, or Andullo, I guess. And that is where, rather than using pilones, which we've talked about a lot on the show, if you're not aware what pilones are, it's where you take the tobacco leaves and you put them into hands, which is like 50 leaves that are basically stacked like that and then tied with a ribbon or something similar at the bottom. And then they lay those in piles of 2,000 to 5,000 pounds, usually about between 3 and 5 feet tall, as far as I've seen. And they just sit there, and that pressure of them sitting there and fermenting causes heat, which causes them to ferment more, and they're very tightly controlled throughout the fermentation process. And with Andulo, they actually do it a little bit differently. What they actually do is they take, I believe, off the top of my head, I don't remember the number. I believe it's 50 pounds of tobacco. And rather than using pilones, they roll it in these bundles that I've seen them at the IPCPR. I think they're about 3.5 or 4 feet long. And then they wrap them in palm leaves and they just ferment inside of that. And you kind of end up with this big brick of fermented tobacco at the end. And as far as I've been told, La Aurora found a process where rather than the typical Andullo process, which is shaving off the leaves, they actually are able to extract the entire leaves and then use those leaves in the filler for this cigar, which you can kind of see if it'll focus there. No focus. Well, I can see Dennis, so that's a good sign. I don't think I can hear him. Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, awesome.
There we go.
Okay. Sure, I stepped into some kind of a vortex.
Yeah, the internet vortex, it'll get you every time. So I was talking about I don't know if you're aware of it. I don't remember if how much I told you about it after I learned about it. But the ADN, the reason it's called the ADN is because that means DNA in Spanish. And they wanted to bring in the old style of fermentation of tobacco leaves. And so rather than using pilones, which obviously we've been to Nicaragua together, you've seen pilones, they wrap up these like 50-pound bundles of tobacco and then wrap them in a palm leaf. And then those bundles ferment, and you end up with like this big brick. And then they are able to convert that brick back into leaves. They're basically able to pull the leaves out of the brick, which I'm not sure how much I'm allowed to talk about that because I know how they do it. I just don't know if they publicized it, and I don't want to spill the beans if they don't want that information out there.
I'd love to see that in person too.
They actually had one at the IPCPR. If you go to Half Wheel, their review, they've actually got a picture from the IPCPR booth last year, I think it was. Was it the 2017 or 2016? It was the 2017 IPCPR. They had one of those on display in the booth, which was really cool to see. And that's actually another thing that I had no idea about, which I don't know. Like once I heard the word Andullo, I don't know how I didn't connect the dots, but Andullo is where the Andalusian bull comes from as well, because the Andalusian bull actually uses some of the same tobaccos. And I've been talking so much while Dennis was offline that my cigar is going out.
I was really pleasantly surprised when I had one of these over the weekend. So pleasantly surprised, not what I expected, but in a really good way.
Yeah, it's I was telling somebody a few days ago that La Aurora can kind of fall into the rut of feeling like one of the old cigar brands because they are the oldest cigar brand in the Dominican Republic. And it can feel like they're just making the same style cigars that they made 10, 20 years ago. And this cigar really showcases that they know how to make some real good cigars with flavors that you're not used to and you haven't tasted before. It's got to me, the smoke has kind of a texture to it that's a little different. I'm trying to figure out how to explain it. But there's like this white pepper note that hits your tongue in a weird way. And it reminds me a little bit of like a Szechuan peppercorn. Mm-hmm. Kind of. It's kind of like a spice that sticks to your tongue a little bit and kind of hangs around and lingers in a good way. I'm really enjoying it. We got a shout out from Bob the Cigar Guy. What up, Bob? If you haven't checked out Bob the Cigar Guy's reviews, he has some fun reviews. In a good way. And I've got audio feedback. There we go. Yeah, so let's get into talking about the pairings a little bit. I'm going to talk about my first pairing here. My first pairing is from Sierra Nevada. And I still don't have video for you, which is weird. I have it in the little preview window, but not in the normal window. But I'm not going to worry about that because it's showing up just fine on Facebook. I think. Actually, I messed it up on Facebook somehow. There we go. Man, technical difficulties all around. So this is Sierra Nevada's stout with cold brew coffee. I'll talk a little bit about Sierra Nevada before I talk about the beer. They are kind of they're largely credited as kind of starting the craft beer revolution. And even though they're certainly not a microbrewery anymore, they make, I think I read they make like 1 million barrels a year or something like that, which is a ton of beer.
That's like 30, what is it, 31 million gallons, right? A barrel is about 31 gallons. That's a lot of beer.
It's a ton of beer. But they still have, like, to me, I know probably not everybody agrees, but to me, they still have that craft spirit, even though you can get it in, as far as I know, every state that I've been to has had Sierra Nevada at least available somewhere. And if you go into a bar that doesn't really have any microbrews or anything like that, chances are they're still going to have Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. And Sierra Nevada was founded in 1979. They brewed their first beer in 1980, which was that pale ale that comes in the bottle with that green label that's kind of, I don't know if I'd use the word iconic, but it's definitely got that kind of, whoa, your focus just did a weird thing there. It's definitely kind of got that, it's a bottle that when you see it from across the room, you know exactly what it is. Which is exactly what they want. So they have good marketing, I think, and they've never stopped pushing. Like, I hate the phrase pushing the envelope, but they've never stopped creating like interesting craft beers. And this was in one of their fall samplers. So this one is obviously a coffee stout, and comes in at 6.2% ABV, 53 IBUs. The only hops are Nugget for both wet hopping and dry hopping. Or I guess not really wet hopping, boil and dry hopping. And then the malts are two-row pale, caramel, chocolate, wheat, and brown malt. And then, of course, they add cold brew coffee to that. So I'm going to take a little taste of this here. And my contact at La Aurora advised that we drink something that's sweet and rich. And he actually emailed me that right before I made my selection. So then I was like, all right, I got some good ideas here. So I figured this would be a nice way to start with sweet and rich. And I've got one that I'm expecting to be much sweeter and much richer a little bit later. So I'm going to take a couple sips and see what I think while you talk about your first.
Man, sweet and rich. That sounds good. And knowing me, of course, the first thing I always jump to is an IPA. And there's a reason for that. I had this over the weekend, the cigar, and I got this really unique spice. And I thought, you know what, that might actually work really well. It's that flavor that you mentioned that you can't quite put your finger on. It's almost like a peppercorn. To me, it's a little bit tannic. It sticks on the tongue almost like a tannin would. And so I thought I need something that's sort of an IPA, but not a typical in-your-face, really dry IPA. More of you think like a New England IPA or a lactose-based IPA or something a little creamier. So I went with funky beer I picked up also over the weekend from Shebeen Brewing, which is out in Walcott, Connecticut. And it's called These Hops. And it's a pale ale. And it's pretty cool because it's all wet hopped. And for those of you that don't know, wet hopping is basically you take the hops off the vine, you throw them right in. You don't process them, you don't dry them, you don't do anything with them. And it gives a slightly different profile, but it also means that generally when you have a beer with a lot of wet hops, you have to do it during the season when they're fresh. Yeah. And I had this beer over the weekend and blew me away. And then I realized that it's a year old. They stopped production in 2016, or I guess a little more than a year old. Yeah, so 2016 was the last production of this beer. And I just happened to find it in the store all the way in the back in the fridge. And what I was saying before is it's got that sort of the cloudiness, right? The cloudy creaminess. It's a different type of hop flavor. And it's a little bit more subdued and round. I think it's probably the best way to put it. It's a little rounder flavor. Comes in at 5.3%, which is nice. You know, sessionable.
Sessionable.
Yeah. And I think it's working really well. Like the first third of the cigar, man, it fits really nicely with those initial flavors as the cigar warms up. I'm digging it.
Yeah, so I'm finding the beginning of this, it definitely has like that spice that kind of lingers on your palate, and then a very spicy retrohale. But it's also got like a kind of creamy coffee bitterness that I really like, and that is actually really well complemented by the coffee stout. I feel like I don't taste the coffee stout as much, but it definitely brings out some of the coffee flavor in the cigar. We got a shout out from Nate McIntyre, who's he's the, oh man, if I try to say it, I'm going to mess up his title. He's the marketing coordinator at Miami Cigar, who of course distributes La Aurora cigars here. And he's the one that told me sweet and rich. And this one's not really sweet. It's not as sweet as I thought it would be. But it's definitely got like that richness from the dark malts in the coffee. But I'm used to stouts being a little sweeter than this. This is a little more kind of dry and hoppy than I was expecting.
Is it? Do you find it's a little bit thinner than typical stout?
Absolutely. I think this is, like I was talking about last week, I had that Imperial Stout called Syntax, the peanut butter stout. And that one tastes thin, but it's because it's kind of over-carbonated feeling. So I think if I let this sit out for like an hour, it might warm up a little bit and settle down and kind of get a little more rich and a little more viscous, which is, I mean, I always talk about how viscosity is key in a stout for me.
And John actually in the forum, in the chat earlier this week, he made a really good point. I think maybe it was yesterday. He talked about the aftertaste, which is really just as important as the initial flavor.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious to see how that develops.
Me too. I'm guessing that even though I kind of like the coffee notes, not really competing, but playing off of each other, I think it's going to be better when I go back to it at the end of the show. Before we get into our second pairing, we're going to take a quick break here for one of our sponsors. We'll be right back with more with the ADN Dominicano.
Brought to you by Gurkha Cigars. Gurkha Cigars, makers of the world's finest cigars. Try the 93 rated Heritage featuring a Rosado Ecuadorian Habano wrapper, Nicaraguan binder, and Dominican, Pennsylvania, and Nicaraguan fillers. Blended by Gurkha's blending team at American Caribbean Cigars, it is hand-rolled Nicaraguan, available in 35-count boxes. Talk to your local B&M about the Heritage today, or talk to them about other fine Gurkha cigars. Whatever your taste preference is, Gurkha has a cigar that's right for you.
All right, we're back with Sharing Our Pairings, episode 135, La Aurora ADN Dominicano. See if I can cover up my face enough for it to focus. There we go. Sort of. You're getting too much fingernail. I don't like that much fingernail showing up in my videos. So first, a couple, I was trying to remember what I was thinking about while we were on the break. I just wanted to shout out a couple of our live viewers who are shouting us out. Chico Ray, Ruben Goodblood, and a couple of fine, loyal viewers of Cigar Chat and Sharing Our Pairings. And I'm going to show off my next one here. I bought this because it's got a cool bottle and it was on sale. So this is Stone Double Barrel Whiskey. And interestingly, there's not a ton of information available on it. As far as I can tell, it's owned by a company that has never made another liquor, and it is distilled, I believe, by a local company here called Indio Spirits. They're kind of most well known for their vodkas. They have a couple of interesting vodkas. They have a one that my father-in-law really likes in Bloody Marys is their cucumber vodka. Or no, sorry, lemongrass lime is the one that he puts in Bloody Marys.
Okay.
The cucumber one is from a different company. But I know they bottle the whiskey. I'm not 100% sure that they distill it. But they do give you a little bit more information than a lot of companies do. So they say this is barrel number 18, bottle number 206 out of that barrel. And it was bottled on 5/12/2016. The mash is 40% rye, 30% corn, and 30% barley, which means, of course, you can't call it a bourbon. because it doesn't meet the 51% corn, and you can't call it a rye because it doesn't meet the 51% rye. So it's just I guess the categorization would be an American whiskey. And they talked about it just a little bit on their website. I don't think they talk about it here on the bottle at all. But on their website, they kind of offhandedly mention that it's a moonshine recipe, but they don't go into much detail about that. They just say that it's kind of got the life of a moonshine or something weird like that. Some sort of flowery words.
Yeah, sounds exotic.
Yeah, and they double barrel it, and I mean, I just got to say their marketing is not great. Their website is not great, and there's I'm now noticing there's conflicting information on both of those, because it says on the website it says they're aged in, I think it says new, but maybe it doesn't. It says it's aged in charred American white oak barrels, but that's all they say about it. On the bottle, it says that it's aged in bourbon barrels and finished in rye barrels. So I'm guessing both of those are second use barrels. So they're not brand new barrels. It's a barrel that's previously held bourbon and a barrel that's previously held rye. And they don't give any information on how old it is, which of course, simply calling it whiskey, they don't have to. There's no minimum age. It could have been in there for a day. But it's got a pretty good dark caramel color with my weird distorted face in there. I'm going to take a couple sips, see what I think of Stone Double Barrel. As you can tell, I've already had a couple sips of this bottle.
Yeah.
But I haven't really paired it with a cigar before, so I'm interested to see how it pairs. So what's your next pairing, Dennis?
So quick question for you. So there's no affiliation with Stone Brewing, right?
No.
Okay.
That's what I initially thought when I saw it. So I've talked about it before. Here in Oregon, we can actually look up liquor on the Oregon Liquor website. And I saw this and I was like, oh, a Stone made a whiskey?
Yeah.
I cannot believe it. And I can't wait to try it. And then when I did a little research, it was like, oh, okay, this is a different whiskey company. And then it popped up on the sales. So it went from like $35 to $20. And I was like, I might as well pick up a bottle. So I went to my local shop and picked up a bottle just to see how it is.
Interesting. Okay. My second pairing, I think a lot of people watching the show probably have had at some point, have seen at some point. It's a pale ale, a little bit hotter, 6.3, I believe. I want to say 6.3.
Oh, I know what this is going to be already.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
so, this is a go-to. This is always in my fridge all the time. Anywhere I go, I always have Dale's Pale Ale from Oscar Blues. And interesting distinction. So this comes from the North Carolina brewery, not the Colorado one. And I think they actually, they put it on the can as well. They put it on the bottom of the can. But Oscar Blues is out in Colorado. They're based originally out of Colorado, and they opened up shop in North Carolina and Texas as well. I think 2 locations in Texas, if I'm not mistaken. So those guys are expanding.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Pretty far.
Yeah, they're kind
awesome.
of one of the really, really early craft beer companies that has grown immensely, but is still kind of holds that craft vibe where they like making weird beer. They like, quality is more important to them than pumping out beer as fast as they can.
And from what I know, I spoke to a couple of the reps years ago, and they said, yeah, man, we go to work, we make the beer during the day, we take up whatever we have to take care of in the warehouse, and then the rest, if we have free time, we go outside, we work on our bikes. That's it. They wrench on motorcycles, they make some beer, they hang out, and they make some great stuff. It's a gorgeous pale ale, easy drinking, just a great beer all around. A little bit hoppier than the first one. It's got more of that hop bite, but I think it works really well with the creaminess of the cigar.
Yeah. And Chico Ray says La Aurora is going to be at the Pro Cigar event. I don't remember seeing them on the schedule, but the schedule is very confusing because it's like every day there's 6 different options. But I'm hoping that we get to go see their factory. That would be kind of awesome. Dennis and I, of course, are both going, and he says safe travels to me. Maybe he didn't know you were going.
Yeah.
But we'll both be there.
It should be a fun trip.
Yeah, I'm very excited. It'll be my first time in the Dominican Republic, and my first time seeing cigar factories that aren't in Nicaragua. I've seen like half the factories in Esteli, but I haven't seen any of them in the DR. So I'm excited to see how different it is, and of course, just see the rest of the people in the cigar media and all the cigar consumers that are going to be there. It's always fun going to big events like that.
And it's always so nice when you get to just sit down and hang out. Basically,
Yeah.
You're hanging out. You're talking, it feels very casual. Even the events are always just so casual and nice.
Yeah, I agree. The Stone whiskey is weird. I wasn't sure if it was because when I was drinking it before, I just kind of, it became I got to drink something, so I might as well drink a glass of this. Like I would drink it with dinner, drink it while watching TV or whatever. But now that I'm focusing on it, I'm noticing it just does not have that much character, at least on the nose. It smells a little bit like rye, but there's not a lot of barrel. So I would guess that this was barreled for like under a year or something like that. Like not very long. It smells more like it was in a, I don't know, just like it was aged for a very short period of time, which is surprising to me.
So basically what you're saying is it's a great whiskey for when you're on your lawnmower mowing the yard. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, and on the palate, it's, I mean, now that I'm focusing on it and thinking about it more, it does taste like moonshine. It tastes like moonshine that spent a little time in a barrel. It doesn't really taste like whiskey, I mean, it doesn't have that oakiness or that vanilla sweetness, really. You're getting much more flavor from the spirit than you are from the barrel, which is atypical of a whiskey. Typically in a whiskey, you're tasting mostly barrel, and then some of the spirit kind of accents how the barrel tastes. I'm talking so much, I'm trying to keep my cigar from going out.
Now that I'm trying so hard not to smoke through this cigar, I'm really enjoying the cigar, and I always smoke fast anyway. But about that, I took the band off about that far in, and I talked about creamy flavors developing a little bit more. Now I'm getting close to the middle of the cigar. It's gonna sound weird, but it's almost like a starchy cream, if that makes sense. Almost like think like plantains in a weird, like sweet, starchy kind of way.
I kind of know what you mean. You get that. It's like a mouth coating creaminess that kind of sticks to your palate a little bit.
Exactly. And it's really nice, and it's standing up really well to even Dale's Pale Ale, a lot hoppier. They call it a mountain pale ale because I guess they use a mountain of hops to brew it, and it's standing up pretty well to it.
And Nate says it's a slow smoker for sure. It makes you take your time.
Yes,
and I absolutely agree with that. It tastes like that kind of cigar that if you smoke it too fast, it will punish you.
Yes.
Which I've had many cigars that are like that. If you start smoking a little bit too fast, because it gets that like cloying bitterness on the palate, and it gets overly spicy, and it just reminds you, hey buddy, slow down a little bit. Which I don't mind that quality. I'm not the type that's gonna smoke through that. I'm gonna think about it and slow down a little bit if I end up doing it.
Yeah, same here.
And I forgot to mention at the beginning of the show, this cigar, like before it's lit, you pull it out of the cellophane and you smell it, and it smells amazing. I can't describe it, but it reminds me of like damp tobacco.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like when you're at the farm and you go to the barn and you
Yeah.
smell like the soil and the tobacco. And it's almost like, I don't want to call it manure, but it's got that richness to it.
Yeah, it's intense and rich. I really liked it's one of those things. It reminded me of I don't know, like a whiskey like Lafroig or Lagavulin, where you could smell it for a day
yeah.
before taking a sip.
Yes, yes.
Like I could just
definitely.
sit here and smell the cigar. And Nate says that's Enduyo. That's what it smells like.
That's fantastic.
I love it. We're going to take another break. I'm going to try to make sure my cigar doesn't go out during the break, and we'll be right back with our final pairing.
This show is sponsored by Cigar Oasis. Don't spend all your time worrying about your cigar wrappers cracking, splitting, or falling apart from humidity fluctuation issues. Set it and forget it by choosing Cigar Oasis, a professional solution which provides equal distribution of humidity with precise electronic controls. Monitor your cigars through the internet using the Smart Humidor Wi-Fi attachment. Why don't you spend all your time enjoying your cigars and relaxing, and let Cigar Oasis protect your cigars? Cigar Oasis has solutions for any humidor. Make sure you set it and forget it today.
And we're back. My last one, I tried to do a little research and I couldn't get much information on it. But I wanted to, it's just a really interesting packaging method. So first, it's sealed with wax. And if it'll focus here, they put their logo in the wax, which is really cool. So it's like a wax seal that's on top of the bottle. And this is Stormbreaker Brewing's Barrel Age series. It is the Old Imperial Stout. Stop seeing my face.
Oh,
Camera.
good.
There we go.
Yeah, oldie. Like that.
Yeah. And it's got like this interesting 500 milliliter bottle. And like it's in between a 12 ounce and a 22. I'm trying to remember how much 500 milliliters is. I think that's 16.9 ounces. So it's a little bit less than a bomber, but a little bit more than your typical beer. And I opened this up because I couldn't find information on it, and it says peel here. I opened this up.
Oh, cool.
They've got the description here inside the label. But it was so good, I just thought I would read the whole thing because it's called Chapter 1, Barrel Aged Old Imperial Stout. Many moons ago, Sir Madoff and Sir Wolf from Distillery at Bull Run joined Sir Rob, Sir Dan, and young Martel at Stormbreaker Keep. Not for the mere purpose of talking or discussing, but for brewing. And brew they did. Before the sun awoke, the grain was milled and the mash tun reached temperatures worthy of such an occasion. Sir Wolf cried for an imperial stout, while Sir Rob urged for an old ale. Then they heard it, a small voice, barely audible over the sounds of the auger. Why not both, the voice said. Why not indeed, they all thought simultaneously. They scrambled to get the grain bill just so and worked with tireless abandon. As the hands of the clock turned over and over again, this hybrid ale began to take form. The combination yielded more caramel flavors and lighter toasted flavors of coffee and chocolate than previously imagined. Sir Madoff raised a glass, and with a glimmer in his eye, offered many a barrel for aging. But not any barrel. This beer was then set forth to age a full rotation around the sun in American oak high rye bourbon barrels that were aged for over 10 years. And that is why till this day, they come from all realms to taste what was created that day. Then the voice was heard again and pleaded for more. And it was the voice of ... And that's the end.
Oh,
It's just
goosebumps. I got goosebumps.
It's such a cool way to do a beer description. And the way, like, it's like, if you look at this, you may not notice it first, but it's a book. And those are the pages.
Oh, yeah.
And so you're opening the book to read about the beer. And then, of course, it just says that it was brewed at Stormbreaker, has their address.
Dude, we have to do, like, Cigar Federation story time. We have to. That was good, man.
I just think that's such good marketing. And this was a limited edition beer that they did a release party at the Bull Run Distilling facility downtown Portland. But it's now available kind of on shelves around here. So I'm not sure how much distribution it's getting. I'm guessing not much because it seems like kind of a limited release. But I'm looking forward to this one. It's got I'm already really impressed by the packaging. Oh, and I did also want to mention when I was trying to find this beer, which isn't even on their website, I had to find it through the Facebook event where they released the beer to get any more details about it, which there wasn't much. But while I was looking through, I saw some of their other limited releases that have come out recently, one of which is a hazy IPA called Hazy, so hot right now. Because that's exactly what it is here. Like, everybody's making a hazy pale ale now. Oh, man.
Oh.
All right, I'm going to dig into this while you talk about your last pairing. Dennis, are you still there?
Before I get into my last pairing, I just wanted to go back for a minute and mention something else about the brewery. So Sabine, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
No.
Your audio was behind by a little bit.
I don't know what the hell. That's odd. Okay. So I just wanted to go back to my first pairing quickly and mention something else about Sabine Brewing from Connecticut. They started in 2013. Something pretty cool. They do a lot of contract work. And on their website, you can see a section that says, hey, if you want to make a beer with us, come on down. We'll make they do 15 and 30 BBLs. So That's like, I'll tell you right now, that comes out to, so at minimum, you can make 65 gallons of it. And they didn't put any pricing info on it, but they made it seem like affordable for just anybody to come by and make beer.
Am I losing you, Dennis?
And it's all in house, so it's not like it's a type brewing thing where you have to pay for the whatever excise taxes, you have to pay for the materials. It's all in. I'm not sure. Oh. Now.
Yeah, now I can hear.
Yeah. All right. What? What was the last part you heard?
It's weird. I could hear pretty much everything you were saying, but it started to go in slow motion, and then at a certain point, it just started slowing down to a crawl, and then it suddenly caught up. It was really weird.
Okay, very weird. I mean, all of it's just overpacked right now.
Maybe. So when are you going to be going over there to get some contract brewing done?
Dude, we
Oh man.
talked about earlier today. We gotta do Allen's. We can't do my cut it out.
Yeah, that was real bad. Say your whole answer there again. Can you hear me? I can hear you. Man, this episode's a mess.
Yeah, though. Gremlins, man. We got gremlins everywhere. I don't know.
Give us a second.
Now?
We're going to go into standby mode for a minute so that we can see if we can figure this out. All right. Somehow Dennis got Skype working again.
Oh no!
Um,
Now
some
you're
sort of
choppy.
match. He may have sacrificed a goat, something similar. But I can hear him again, so that's good. So you didn't even get into your last pairing yet, did you?
Oh. Oh.
No.
Can you hear me now? We good?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Awesome. Okay. I'm not sure what happened, so let me get into my last pairing before this thing dies on me.
All right.
Skype is not playing well today, it seems like. So my last pairing. You still there?
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh.
You're losing me now? I think so. All right, we're back. Hopefully that's the end of those problems. So now, why don't you talk about your final pairing?
Last pairing, something kind of special to me. I got from my first recent trip to Cuba back in November. Van Club 7.
I was thinking a rum would go really well with this.
Which, as a non-rum drink, this stuff is fantastic. Yeah. There's a pretty thought, you know what, let me try rum. And let me try something that's not as refined as a maestro or an older aged rum. I wanted to try a 7-year instead. I want to see how it fits. Just, the spicy notes, the nuances of the cigar, they're a little bit edgier. And I wanted to pair something also similarly edgy to the cigar, which is a beautiful, hard to see, I guess, but beautiful rum. And I mean, now as the cigar is developing, the cigar is getting a little bit stronger, a little bit spicier, but those same flavors I mentioned before, the starchiness kind of comes out more. And it is really definitely, I don't know how it is for you, but it's really coating my tongue more intensely than it was before. And I think that's, I'm going to have to sip through it a little bit, but I think it's going to work really nicely with the rum.
I've been drinking, while we've been having technical difficulties, I've been drinking some of my Barrel Aged Chapter 1 from Stormbreaker Brewing. And first of all, this is a phenomenal beer. it's got like that chocolatey coffee richness with a little more hops than you would expect. Um, but it's not super dark, super chocolatey, as much as some stouts are. It definitely, I can see why they're calling it like an old ale mixed with an imperial stout. It's still got kind of that more like brown ale style leatheriness. Um, but then the barrel aging on this is so good. I mean, when you barrel age a beer for a year, you get a lot of that booziness, a lot of that viscosity, and you get a lot of that kind of that oak char making its way into the beer. And I wasn't sure if this cigar would stand up to it, because I wouldn't call this a strong cigar. It's kind of medium plus, but I think it's absolutely got enough flavor to stand up to a beer like this, which has a ton of flavor. How does the Havana Club 7 pairing with it?
Man, it is unbelievably refreshing. That's the best way I can put it. Where the cigar is at right now with the rum, it's so refreshing together. And this is just, it's not mixed with anything. It's just neat.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the 7 was a really good choice. And normally that's a rum that a lot of people don't sip. Generally, they try to mix it with something. And I think the perfect mixer for this rum is basically this cigar. That's the only mixer you need.
I've featured that rum on the show a lot of times because I think that rum has, I say it every time Cuban rum comes up, it's got that bitter character to it, but with the sweetness, and it's kind of rough around the edges in a good way. It's kind of a little more brash than you expect a rum to be.
Yes, absolutely. That's a good way to put it.
And I think it works. The flavors in that rum work really well with pretty much any cigar. But I could see it going really well with this cigar in particular.
That's a good way to put it.
Man, I audio looped myself. I refreshed the Facebook page to see what the latest comments were because Facebook sometimes likes to stop showing me. And Chico Ray says that when we visit La Aurora, we need to ask for Manuel Inua, the master blender. He's awesome and very humble.
Ooh, very nice.
And then Nate McIntyre says that the Stormbreaker sounds amazing based on the story on the label alone.
And the wax seal too, right? I mean, that's a nice little touch. It's kind of like when you go to the store and you buy a bottle that has a cap, but it also has a cork.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really necessary, but it's kind of a nice little touch that adds to the whole.
Yeah, it kind of adds to the whole experience.
Feel of the beer before you even drink.
Man, and I'm losing you again.
Oh. Oh no.
I think you're back now, but we got the last 30 seconds of what you were saying over the course of a minute and a half.
All right. You know what it is?
Your pipes aren't fat enough. That's what it is.
No, they're not. I gotta fatten
those pipes.
You know the moon that we had last night, the super blue.
Oh yeah.
Moon. I'm blaming it. It has to be.
It has to be that. That and the sun
from
flares
space.
combined.
Like what else could it be? Solar flares.
I forgot to look at the moon last night. That's disappointing.
Yeah. I'm sure there are pictures. You didn't miss much. Still.
Yeah, I mean it's just the moon.
Round, which is good.
Man, I can't get over how good this beer is. It's so complex. Yeah, it's sweet, it's leathery, it's bitter. It's got a ton of whiskey flavor. And it's.
What about the cigar? How's the?
I don't know.
how's cigar going for you?
Really well. You can't really see it, but this is a little lighter than it looks. It's kind of got like a real dark red brown thing going on. It's not quite as dark as you would expect a stout to be. It's actually a little bit lighter than the Sierra Nevada. So I got to take a couple more puffs of the cigar before it goes out, but then I'll talk about my thoughts on it. There's so many different layers of flavor in this cigar. It's got
I really
that,
like the way like you said, it's medium.
Mm-hmm. Man, these issues are killing us. We keep talking over each other. I can't tell when you're talking and when you're not. It's got that white pepper spice that kind of lingers a little bit and sticks to your tongue.
And it was great.
All I heard was it was great. That's all we could hear. So back to the cigar. It's got that white pepper spice that sticks to the tongue a little bit. It's got some very sweet oakiness, I would call it. It's like a sweet wood kind of flavor. It's a little more rich and dark than like a cedar. And then it's got that kind of creamy coffee component where the coffee isn't sticking to your palate, but the cream part is, which is interesting. It just kind of like the flavor of the cigar develops as it sits on your palate. Dennis, you're back.
Interesting. I find from outer space. I'm. It is putting a little bit cigar, but in a good way. It's balancing. Hopefully,
All right,
you heard that.
No, I didn't hear any of that. I just heard it's balancing out. So why don't you say that again so we can all hear it? No. I love Dennis and I were talking about it before the show. I love the band on this cigar. It's got kind of that trendy new like unbalanced thing going on, where it's not quite symmetrical, which is a new trend, but I really like how it looks on a cigar. And Nate says there's quite a bit of Ligero in the filler, which I would believe. It doesn't have that strength, but it has that richness that you get from Ligero.
Is my audio okay?
It is now, for at least the next 10 seconds.
It is now? Fantastic. I have 10 seconds to speak my mind. Well, my rum pairing is going to say that.
Your rum pairing is going well? No. I'm losing you again. Let's go into standby mode and see if we can get this figured out. One more how this works.
Let's make it happen.
All right, let's see if this works this time. We're going to go a little bit over tonight because we have about 10 minutes of silence that we have to pick up before I can recut the episode. So, Dennis, why don't you tell us about how that last pairing went?
Hopefully I can. I don't know. We'll see. Man, my last pairing is really nice. It's the rum is coating the tongue and cutting a lot of the intensity, in a good way, the intensity from the cigar, and really balancing those flavors that I had at the beginning of the cigar and toward the middle of the cigar. With the rum, all those flavors come back. The richness, the creaminess, all the nuance is still there, which is really cool. And I think the rum is actually helping to balance it out. It's a really nice pairing overall.
So I would call the Stormbreaker Old Imperial Stout barrel aged in Bull Run distilling barrels. I'm not really sure what to call this. It's got so many words on it that it's like it throws me for a loop every time I try to read the label. But since we had some technical difficulties and we're going a little over here, and I don't want to just kind of run back through my pairings over and over again for the next 10 or 15 minutes. I had a bottle sitting here, and you inspired me to do a bonus pairing. So I'm going to try some rum.
Oh,
nice. 12.
Good choice.
I've just been keeping this in my garage, like at my desk here, so that at night when I'm just sitting out here smoking a cigar, it's like, I think I need a little Flor de Caña that I've got it just right there.
Good choice.
I wish I had some Dominican rum to pair with it, but I just don't have any. At least I don't think.
You will pretty soon.
Yeah, I'm sure I will. I'll smuggle some back in my belly. Yeah, I mean, the sweetness of the rum goes really well with the kind of sort of lack of sweetness of the cigar. It's not that there's no sweetness, but it's not a particularly sweet cigar, which I kind of like. I mean, for me, when for some reason that just made me think of when I first started smoking, I thought I hated Maduro. I thought I hated Maduro wrappers because in the early 2000s, if you saw a Maduro wrapper, it meant either the cigar was really strong or it was really, really sweet. And I felt like everything was either too strong for me or too sweet, so I thought I hated Maduros. And it took me a while to come around to that. But this reminds me of that era where a kind of natural colored cigar didn't have a lot of sweetness. And even though there's some sweetness from that, like that creamed coffee, that kind of creamy kind of flavor, the story of this one is more spice and savory flavors.
That's a really good point. I was going to say umami. Actually, I'm getting a lot of umami from the processing of the tobacco to go into the cigar, and I think it's really cool because it's a different. Looking at it, I expected a totally different flavor profile than what I got.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's refreshing.
It's got so much spice on the retrohale that I'm really surprised by that in particular. That's the main thing that surprises me about this cigar.
Especially considering it's really not that strong of a cigar, to be honest.
No, definitely not. It's got strength, but it's more richness than strength.
Yes.
But then the retrohale is very spicy. All right, I got to take another sip of this Flor de Caña. Yeah, the sweetness of the rum really plays up some of the more savory flavors in the cigar. And I have to say, because of our technical difficulties, I almost forgot we have one last commercial break. We don't go anywhere, but we will tell you that this segment is brought to you by Drew Estate. Smoke them, they good. I feel bad doing Logan's old read, which was just they good, and then be done with it. I feel like I have to at least plug something.
Go on safari, meet the people, talk to the people, experience what it means to just be there at the farms, right? See the factory, see the process behind the cigars that most of us, if not all of us, love and smoke. I mean, even if you don't smoke Drew Estate, get some. You're gonna have a cigar that you like from those guys. They make a ton of different stuff.
Yeah, and actually
stuff painted too.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned safari, we've been talking a little bit about how we're going to the DR in a couple weeks. No matter where you go, if you're going on a factory tour of a cigar factory, it's going to be awesome. That's my experience. Drew Estate makes it feel more like a spa weekend kind of thing, where you're busy, you're doing stuff all the time, but it's the most accessible way to kind of see how cigars are made. You don't have to invest an entire week in it. You don't have to invest a ton of money. The only hard part is getting that ticket, because they sell out crazy fast. So if you can go on Cigar Safari, just do it. It'll be worth it. It's the experience of a lifetime. And if you happen to go with a group, great. You're going with a bunch of people you at least kind of know. If you're not going with a group, you're going to make a bunch of friends.
Absolutely.
Back to the La Aurora, though. Man, I can't get over how good this cigar is. Oh, man. Nate says, when we're at the La Aurora factory, get a bottle of La Aurora rum.
Oh, my God. All right. Going to make it happen.
Yeah, that's going to happen for sure. Yeah, this cigar just it's got so many flavors that I've never tasted in a cigar before that I can't identify. That it's weird.
It is. You're right. It is weird. There's some flavors in there that I'm also kind of struggling to put my finger on, and I'm still sticking to my guns on that plantains thing. I don't know why. That's just my particular palate is a little weird.
There's definitely a little bit of that like plantain banana kind of vegetal flavor. Yeah. That I don't think I've tasted that in a cigar before. So I've been talking about it for the last couple weeks, and one of the hardest things about smoking cigars, and particularly reviewing them and talking about them in a place like this, is naming the flavors. Yeah. You taste the flavors, they go to your brain, and then the hard part is figuring out where have I tasted that flavor before, and you have to connect it with something that may taste kind of different, but you get the same feeling from it. And I know we've all given Charlie a lot of shit for his flavor notes. But that's where those weird flavor notes come from, is like, where have I tasted this specific flavor before? And maybe it's like a sushi roll, or maybe it's a gyro, or I don't know. It's a 7-year aged Madagascar vanilla. But this particular cigar, I have a hard time putting my finger on a lot of the flavors in this cigar. Like I've said white pepper over and over again. There's oak. There's a little bit of cedar. There's some sweetness that I can't quite put my finger on. There's definitely some nuts, some like almonds and peanuts in there. I'm trying to figure out what else.
Clementines.
Yeah, there's definitely citrus in there. Man, you nailed it.
It's oddly specific, and maybe some people may not get it, but that's for my palate, that's kind of the best thing I can think of.
Yeah, it's kind of there's like a orange peel kind of bitterness in there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a different kind of bitterness. Maybe even honestly to go deeper into it, to call it maybe like the pith of the Clementine.
Yeah.
Which is an odd thing to talk about because when's the last time you heard somebody say that word, right? Pith.
Yeah. Yeah. Pithy.
It's a little
It just
pithy,
sounds
but
like
it's, hey.
it sounds like Mike Tyson going to the bathroom. Yeah, I had to take a pith. So I don't have any more of the Stone whiskey, so I'm not going to return to that one. I mean, I have more, but I'm not going to return to it because it's just I don't think that those flavors go with cigars at all. I just went back and I tasted some of the Sierra Nevada Coffee Stout. I think it's actually so as I said at the top of the show, that Nate sent me kind of his suggestion of sweet and rich. And the coffee stout, this coffee stout in particular, doesn't have enough sweetness or richness. It's dark and malty, but then there's so much coffee flavor that it completely is blowing out my palate for the cigar right now. Let me taste this rum again. I mean, the sweetness from the rum, I think, really highlights some of the more earthy, umami kind of flavors in the cigar. And I'm noticing that the cigar is getting a little less spicy now as I'm working my way into the final third. So I'm curious how, when I go back to this barrel-aged Imperial Stout, how it's going to do.
With my pairings, I'm starting to notice a little bit, as I'm pretty much at the end of the cigar, I'm starting to notice that the IPAs that were really good in the beginning, that fit really nicely with the flavor profile of the cigar, are kind of falling off a little bit. They're not fitting as nicely with the cigar. Mm-hmm. And so going back to what Nate mentioned about hoppiness, honestly, I feel like any rum, but in my case, the Havana Club 7 would be a great pairing from start to finish.
Yeah, there's a lot of rums that I can think of that would go really, really well with this cigar. I mean, you're drinking you're drinking Havana Club. I'm drinking Flor de Caña. Diplomatico comes to mind. Have you had that one?
Yes.
I think that would go really well with the cigar because it's got that sweet, rich character. Yeah, it's really. Have you noticed in the last third that the spice is kind of falling off?
Yeah, I'm not getting much spice at all.
It's actually getting kind of sweeter to me.
There's still definitely a little bit of bitterness there, but it's the sweetness is coming out. It's more pronounced.
Yeah. For me, the Stormbreaker barrel-aged Old Imperial Stout is the winner of the night. I'm trying to hold it up in front of my face so we can get a good focus.
It's a really nice looking bottle. The shape is great. It's not typical. It's definitely unique all around.
There we go. Yeah, I think this is just a nice looking bottle. And I really like the addition of that, like, turn the page kind of wrapper.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to have to find out what chapter 2 is because I need to find out the rest of the story.
Well, you're going to have to read it out loud for all of us.
Of course. Yeah, if you've been sleeping on this cigar, you made a bad decision. You should go buy something. It's unlike any La Aurora I've ever had. In a good way.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. It stands out on its own.
Nothing against La Aurora, because Nate is watching. No, not only because Nate is watching, because I love their cigars. But they fall into that, I've smoked that before category for most people. And this is unlike anything else they've made for me. And oh, okay, Nate has one more note for us. During the final third, when you get that sweetness, do a really long retrohale and check that sweetness.
Interesting. Okay.
Oh man, yeah. There's like a. It's almost a chocolatey sweetness.
That's a Boston cream right there. That's the best way I can put it, is a Boston cream.
For me, it reminds me of like of milk chocolate on the retrohale.
Not the cheap stuff either, right? The good stuff, the Milka.
Yeah, like a. I'm trying to remember what kind of chocolate I had recently that my kids really liked. It was a dark chocolate, but it was very sweet and very creamy. And that's what this reminds me of on the retrohale. Like, it's got that deep, rich sweetness.
You know, I have to say, a little bit of the funk on the cigar reminds me of, talking about chocolate, it reminds me of a classic Hershey's milk chocolate. And Hershey's milk chocolate is so popular, I don't know if anybody really knows, but it's so popular because the milk is a little bit sour. Yeah. That's their secret. That's how they get their flavor.
Huh. I've noticed that flavor, but I didn't know that it had anything to do with the milk.
Yes, it's Milton Hershey, in the vat that they used to keep the milk in, it would sour just a little bit, and they used it and thought, oh man, this is great. It tastes nothing like, the Bavarian milk chocolates, the Austrian milk chocolates, or the Swiss. It was very distinctly different, and he jumped on that and turned it into an empire.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. All right. I think I'm ready to wrap up the show. I'm really going to finish this cigar. I think I'm going to nub this thing. Like, just the complexity of this is kind of astounding to me, because it's much more complex than I expected it to be. All right. Well, any closing comments from you, Dennis, before I do the spiel?
Yes. Honestly, get this. If you haven't had this cigar, go to a store, get one, get a 5-pack, get a box. It's, for me, like, this is easily, now that I've had a few, easily a box purchase. Really digging the nuances of the cigar. So give it a shot. Yeah,
absolutely. Give it a shot if you haven't tried it before. This cigar is worth trying, and it's just different. That's what makes it so good, is that it's different. I mean, everybody's always looking for the next big thing, and this one is it's got a lot of character that you're not going to get in anything else. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for watching, listening, watching on YouTube, watching live on Facebook. Thank you for commenting. We appreciate you guys being there, commenting, liking what we do. And we'll be back next week. We'll actually be back tomorrow. We're going to do another episode of Sharing Our Pairings tomorrow. If you've ever had Prairie's Bomb Imperial Stout, it's an Imperial Stout aged with chocolate, vanilla,
so
good, coffee, and what's the last one that I'm missing? Chilies. So we're going to be tasting the deconstructed version of that. They actually made a version of each of the ingredients highlighted exclusively. So we're going to be trying that tomorrow night with some Tatuaje K222s. Tune in, see what we think. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll be back next week with another episode of Sharing Our Pairings, back with my normal co-host, Dennis. We want you to stay safe, have a great week, and we want you to drink better, but we want you to drink less.